So we're going to learn how to graph equations in lesson 7b. Within graphing equations, we talk about solutions to equations, then we also actually graph equations on our own using a T-chart, which is going to be the second page of these notes. Please make sure you're following along with these notes in your OneNote. That way you can reference back to them as you go to do your homework assignment. So for our learning targets today, I can determine whether an ordered pair is a solution to an equation. And then the second part of this is the graphing part. So I can create a table of solutions for an equation and I can graph linear equations. Okay, keep in mind for 7th grade, all of your equations are going to be linear. Linear just means they make a straight line. Okay, so when I say straight line, I mean it's going to be straight across. It's not going to be curved at all. Okay, so it might be straight across like this. It could be like a straight up and down line. It could be a diagonal line or a diagonal line looking like this. Either way, it's going to be straight, a straight line. So you won't have any like curves like that. It won't look like this. It also won't look like that is a common line that we see in math. So it's going to be a straight line if it's linear. Okay. So for checking solutions, all I do here in this first part is I give you an equation. An equation looks like this. It has an x and it has a y. So I give you some equation and then I give you some ordered pairs. And I just say, hey, is this ordered pair a solution to that equation? To determine if it is a solution to the equation, all you have to do is plug it into the equation and tell me if it makes the equation true or if it makes the equation correct. Okay, so we'll try a couple examples of these. This first one, which ordered pairs, and I actually give you 4 ordered pairs here. I want to know which ones are solutions to the equation y equals 2x. Okay, and as a reminder, I do want to write x and y above my ordered pairs, just to remind us that the x value comes first and the y value comes second. Okay, so let's first try out this first ordered pair. Okay, so your equation says y equals 2x. Well, this means that the y value of this ordered pair, which is 10 in this case, should be equal to 2 times the x value, which in this case is 5. So to determine if this is correct, we just plug it in. So in place of y right here, I'm going to plug in a 10 because I think that y would be 10. I think this is true. It might not be. That's what I'm trying to decide. So I think the y is 10. So I'm going to put 10 equals. Here's my 2, and that just comes from right here. Just drop it straight down. And then in place of x right here, I'm plugging in a 5. And I'm just going to write it in parentheses, just like that. Okay, now, right now, we don't know if it's true, so I'm going to put a question mark there. We have to decide if it is. Okay, we'll bring down your 10. We still are trying to decide if it's equal or not. And then you can actually multiply this part. So do 2 times 5. When you multiply 2 times 5, we get 10. So right now, I have 10 equals 10. That is true. 10 is equal to 10. So I know that yes, this ordered pair is a solution to the equation that they gave us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say yes for this one. All right, let's try a couple more. So in this next one, same idea. So it's the same equation. It's y equals 2x. In place of y, I'll use orange again. In place of y, I'm using a 5. In place of x, I'm using a 10. So it's flipped this time, and let's see if that gives us the same answer. Okay, so again, in place of y, the y is always the second value. I'm plugging in a 5. This might be equal, I'm going to put a question mark because we're not sure, to 2 times whatever the x value is. In this case, the x value is 10. Okay, now we actually just solve it, like solve this part of it. So multiply and see if it's correct. So bring down your 5, bring down your equals. We'll check to see if it's equals, and then solve this. So do 2 times 10. I know 2 times 10 is 20. And then ask yourself, is 5 equal to 20? We know that is not equal. So instead of an equal sign, put a slash through it to say that it's not equal. And then we say no, that is not a solution to the equation y equals 2x. All right, let's try a couple more. So same equation, y equals 2x, but let's try it with some other ordered pairs. So I have the same thing, y equals 2x. When I say show your work for this, I just mean show me what you're plugging in. So in place of y, you're plugging in a 2. In place of x, you're plugging in a -1. So I have 2 equals 2 times -1. Put a question mark above your equal sign because you're not sure if it's equal. That's what we're trying to find out. Okay, bring down your 2 equals, solve this part or multiply that part, compute it. 2 times -1 gives me a -2. I know 2 is not equal to -2, so for this one, I would say no. Or you can write not a solution. This would not be a solution to the equation y equals 2x. All right, and then one more. Let's try this one. So it's same equation, y equals 2x. In place of y, we're putting a -2. In place of x, we're plugging in a -1. So we're checking to see if -2 equals 2 times -1. Okay, put a question mark here because we're not sure. Bring down your -2. I know 2 times -1 is -2. -2 is equal to -2. So this one would be a yes. Okay, perfect. All right, we're just going to do a few more of these, and then we'll practice some other kind of questions. So let's scroll down to these ones. So same idea, tell whether 7 - 6 is a solution to the equation x plus 3y equals 14. So same idea, I'm going to put x and y above my ordered pair just to remember which ordered pair or which value is which. So the 7 is the x value, the -6 is the y value. Okay, so what that means is in place of x, I'm plugging in a 7. In place of y, I'm plugging in a -6. So instead of x, I'm going to put 7 plus, here's my 3. In place of y right here, I'm plugging in a -6. So 3 times -6 equals 14. Again, you're checking to see if this is actually equal, so put a question mark above your equal sign. Now let's actually compute and see if all this stuff over here equals 14. If it does, we say yes. If not, we say no. Okay, so I have 7 plus, let's multiply 3 times -6 is -18. And again, we're still checking to see if that is equal to 14. Okay, now I have a +7, -18. Those are different signs. Subtract. 18 minus 7 gives me 11. Keep the sign of the bigger number. So it's a -11 is equal to 14. Well, is -11 equal to 14? No. So put a slash through it and then say no. It is not a solution. Okay, so in order for it to be a solution, both sides here have to be equal. Just like in these examples up here. When both sides were equal, we said yes. When both sides were not equal, we said no. All right, and let's try this last one. Tell whether 4, 7 is a solution of the 2x plus 3y equals 24. So go ahead and pause the video and see if you can determine if it's a solution, and then I'll work it out for you. All right, so your ordered pair is x, then y. I like to color code it just so I know what I'm plugging in. So my x, in place of x is going to be a 4. In place of y is going to be a 7. So I have 2 times 4, because again, your x is a 4, plus 3 times 7, because my y is a 7. And that might equal 29. We're not really sure. All right, now again, compute this and see if it equals 29. I know 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 7 is 21. That might equal 29. We're still working on it. Now do this. 8 plus 21. Well, I know 8 plus 21 is 29. and I was trying to get 29, okay, and I did, so then my answer is yes, this is a solution because I got the same number on both sides of my equal sign. Okay, so when I plug in a 4 and a 7 for the x and the y, when I plug that in place of the x and the y in my equation, it makes the equation true. 29 equals 29, that's true. All right, so now let's talk about how to graph equations. And a linear equation, remember linear just means it's going to be a straight line. So your linear equations are just going to be a straight line. And they are going to look mostly like these first two examples, the y equals 2x and the y equals negative 4x. The y is going to be all by itself on one side of the equal sign, and then you're going to have the x over on the other side of the equal sign. Okay, so when you're doing this, I kind of put some steps up top to help you guys if you kind of get stuck or forget how to do it. First thing you're going to do is make a table of values. We will learn how to graph without a table of values, but for now, first thing I need you to do is make a table of values, and a table of values is just this, these things, and I'm already going to have those created for you. You just have to fill them in. Okay, so you make a table of values, and then you want to complete your table and list your ordered pairs. Okay, your next step is to graph your ordered pairs, doing what we learned how to do last time I saw you. So graph the x value first, and then graph the y value second. And then the very last thing you do is connect the points with a line, and you always have to make sure you put arrows on both ends of the line. The reason we do that is because if your graph were bigger, your line would still keep extending. It doesn't just stop on the coordinate plane that you're given. Okay. When I say make a table of values, next to this, it says 2 positives, 2 negatives, and 0. Anytime you are making your table of values, you're always going to use the same numbers. The numbers we are always going to use are -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. So please write that in just so you remember that when you're using a table of values, you guys are always going to use these exact same numbers, just to ensure that your graph fits on the coordinate plane that I give you. You could use any number you want to, but if you plug in like a 50 for x, then your y value would be 100, and your coordinate plane can't fit over 50 and up 100. It only goes up to tens. Okay, so that's why we're always going to use these. Use -2, -1, 0, 1, 2 for your x values. Okay, so always use these as the x values for the x values. Okay, there is one little trick where you don't use it, and that is unless the equation has a fraction. And I'll talk about what to do if that happens. Okay, otherwise, if there's no fraction in the equation, you're going to use -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. Okay, so let's talk about what we mean by plugging in these numbers and making a table of values. So in this first example, I say graph the equation y equals 2x. So all that means is it means in your table of values, you plug in these numbers, which are already there for you. So you plug in -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. This middle spot right here is space for you to show your work. Okay, so showing your work just means in place of x, in place of this x right here, I need you to plug in these 5 numbers that you're choosing to use. Okay, so for this first space, let's put y equals, and it's 2, and then again, in place of x right here, I'm using a -2, so 2 times -2. Okay, I know 2 times -2 is -4, so my y value is a -4. Okay, for this next part, do the same thing. So I have y equals 2 in parentheses. Again, in place of x, you're using a -1, so plug in a -1. I know 2 times -1 is -2, so my y value is -2. Okay, so when my x value is -2, my y value is -4. When my x value is -1, my y value is -2. Let's keep going. So when my x value is 0, plug it in, 2 parentheses 0. I know 2 times 0 is 0. So when my x value is 0, my y value is also 0. And then we have 2 more. I have y equals 2 times 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And then I have y equals 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so when my x value is 1, my y value is 2. When my x value is 2, my y value is 4. Okay, so there are your first 2 steps. Well, part of step number 2. The last part of step number 2 says list them as ordered pairs, which is what this last part of the table is asking you to do. So this is just saying, okay, your x is -2, your y is -4. Just write it as an ordered pair, -2, -4. This one would be -1, -2. And I'm just getting it by doing this, comma this. And then this, comma this. Now I have 0, 0, 1, 2, and 2, 4. Okay, now from here, our third step is to graph these ordered pairs. So right now, you have 5 ordered pairs that you have to graph. And remember, when you're graphing, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis, and your x always comes first. Your x tells you where to go either left or right. Your y tells you where to go either up or down. Okay, so graphing this first ordered pair, -2, -4, the x value is -2, so that means go to the left 2. Your y value is a -4, so that means from here, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right there, nice and big, put a nice big dot. And when you're graphing lines, you don't have to, usually we label it, so below here we would label -2, -4. When you're graphing lines, you don't have to. Okay, all right, now I'll kind of color code this. This dot is right there, the yellow one. Okay, now let's do this one. -1, -2. So it means on the x value, or on the x line, go to -1. On the y value, or the y-axis, the y value is -2, so go down 2. Nice big dot right here. Left 1, down 2. It's right there. Okay. All right, your next ordered pair, I have this in green, is 0, 0. 0, 0 is just the origin, so right in the center. Put a nice big dot. I'm going to highlight it green just to color code where these points are going. The next point is 1, 2, so that means from the center, go right 1, and then up 1, 2, and you get right there. So right 1, up 2 gets you to that spot. Okay, and then one more spot, let's do this in purple, is this one, 2, 4. So that means from the origin, go right 2 spots, go up 1, 2, 3, 4 spots, and you end up right there. Okay. All right, once you have your 5 dots on your graph, your last step is to connect the points with a line and use arrows. There is a line tool in OneNote you guys can use, so just use that line tool. I need a straight line going through all the dots, and please notice on my straight line, I did not just only connect the 5 points or the 5 coordinates that I graphed, I connected it all the way through. Okay, and then also notice I also put arrows at the end of mine, so please make sure you do the same. I need lines all the way through your graph, and then I need arrows at the end of it. Okay, keep in mind your line or your ordered pairs should make a straight line. Okay, so you should be able to find some sort of pattern happening from like one point to the next point. So if I go from this first point to the second point, I'm going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1. There's a pattern going on. That's how I know my answer is correct. If you go up 2 over 1, so let's say you go up 2 over 1 and then like up 3 over 1, there's something wrong with that. That's not going to make a straight line for you. So you should be going up and over the same amount to get from the first point to the second point every time. All right, let's have you guys try this next one. So go ahead and pause the video and try this next one. You're still using your same x values, so you're still going to use a -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. And if you think you could do it, go ahead and pause the video and try this one all by yourself and see if you can graph it. If you want maybe some help doing, maybe just doing this first ordered pair with me, then keep the video going and then just pause it after the first ordered pair when I talk you through how to do that first one. All right, so if you want to see how to get when the x is -2, that just means in place of x right here, you're plugging in a -2. So I have y equals -2, and that comes from this -2 right here. So -2, parenthesis, now you're plugging in that -2. So -2 minus 6, okay? Now we actually have to do the math here. You are going to subtract 6, but you first have to multiply. I think order of operations tells you to multiply before you do your subtracting. So I need you to multiply -2. You're doing this. -2 times -2 gives you a +4. And then 4 minus 6 gives you -2. Okay, so your ordered pair is -2, -2. All right, for your next one, and again, if you're working... if you just need some help with that first one, go ahead and pause your video and see if you can finish this one up on your own. If you still need a little bit of help, let's keep watching. So it's y equals -2 parenthesis. In this case, you're plugging in a -1 in place of x. So -1 minus 6. You have to solve this now. -2 times -1 is 2. 2 minus 6 is -4. If you have 2 of something and you take 6 away, you now have -4. All right, now let's plug in a 0. So y equals -2, parenthesis, 0 minus 6. -2 times 0 is 0. You still have to do the minus 6. If you have 0 and you take away 6, you now have -6. And also don't forget to write these as ordered pairs. So 0, -6. Okay, now I have a 1 to plug in, so it's -2, parenthesis, in place of x, we're plugging in a 1, so times 1 minus 6. -2 times 1 gives you -2. -2 minus 6 gives you a -8. Okay, I'm now at 1, -8. And then lastly, y equals -2, parenthesis, 2 minus 6. Do -2 times 2, and you get -4 minus 6, which gives me a -10. So I have 2 comma -10. Okay, one thing I want you to notice is this, your middle step right here, at least when you plug it in, you should notice that this is the only thing changing every time, just that number that you're plugging in. Another thing is if you want to, when you do this subtracting step right here for like 4 minus 6, you can do keep, add, opposite, keep, add, opposite, keep, add, opposite, keep, add, opposite, keep, add, opposite. So you can solve it that way instead of thinking of it as subtraction. Usually when we subtract integers, we do keep, add, opposite. And then if you were to do it like this, you're like, okay, this is a +4, this is a -6. Different signs subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Okay, so that's where the -2 comes from. Same thing here. This is a -6. This is a +2. Different signs subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number. For this one, this next one, 0 doesn't have a sign, so you just take 6 away, you're at -6. This is a -2, -6, same sign, add and keep. This is -4, -6, same thing, same sign, add and keep. Okay. All right, and then your last step is to graph them. So to graph the point -2, -2, that means I want to go from the origin, I go left 2 and then down 2, and it gets me right here. Oops. Okay, now from here I want to graph the point -1, -4. So I go left 1 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, and it gets me right there. So -1, -4 is right here. Here's -2, -2. My next one is 0, -6. So be careful of this one. So the 0 tells you that from the origin, left and right, you go 0. So you just stay right there. And then you go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right there. Okay, just be careful of that one. If you end up over here, that's not right. And you'll know that's not right because if you try to put a dot over here and then you try to connect these dots right here, you're going to have to go way over, and that doesn't make a straight line. All right, your next ordered pair is 1, -8. So we go right 1, we go down -8, we end up right there. And then lastly is the point 2, -10. So that means from the origin we go right 2, and we go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right there. All right, once you have your 5 ordered pairs graphed, we connect them with a straight line going all the way through, all the way through, and then at the end of your line, make sure you have arrows. All right, awesome. Another side note, you are now allowed to use a calculator, so when you get to this step, 4 minus 6, 2 minus 6, 0 minus 6, -2 minus 6, and -4 minus 6, you can use a calculator just to double check that you're getting those final answers correct. And I do have a certain calculator that I want you to use just because I know it's the same calculator I'm going to have you guys use on your homeworks and the same ones I'm going to embed on your test and on your checkpoint. So to get to that calculator, we're going to go ahead and bookmark it as well. So to get to that calculator, can I have you guys open up your Canvas? And on Canvas, click the Math 7 course. Click on that agenda. And here's your agenda for today. On the left-hand side, please click Home. And my home page looks like this. And then from this page, all these links right here, it's the second link. The first one says Math 7 Policies and Information. The second one says Desmos Calculator. If you click here, where it says click here, that's the one we want to use. And we do want to bookmark it. So you guys will have a star up at the top of yours. You are going to want to bookmark this calculator because I want us to get used to using the same calculator, especially when it comes to fractions. But okay, and in this calculator, if you wanted to do this -4 minus 6, you just push the negative, so it's like the subtraction button, -4 minus 6, and it gives you that answer right there. And then to clear it, you can just push clear, or this blue button with the arrow pointing down, if you push that, it clears it out and it gives you a new line to work with. Okay, so I need this mostly to help us with this last example that we're going to do together. So my trick for you for step 1 is always use -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, but you do have an exception, and that's when your equation has a fraction in it. If your equation has a fraction, instead of using -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, you're going to multiply each of those numbers by whatever the denominator is. Or an easier way for me to think about it is you just use multiples of the denominator. In this case, our denominator is a 2. So I'm going to use the first 2 multiples of 2, and then I'm going to change them to be negatives so that I have some negatives as well. Okay, so you're always going to use 0. So I'm going to put 0 in the middle. And then your first multiple of 2 just means take 2 times 1. Well, I know 2 times 1 is 2. So that's going to be the first positive number that I use. And then your second multiple of 2 is whatever 2 times 2 is. So 2 times 2 is 4. Okay? If I use a 2 and a 4, then I'm also going to use a -2 and a -4. Okay? So please notice I did not use -2, -1. I did use 0. That stays. You're always going to use 0. And then also notice here I did not use 1 and 2, I used 2 and 4. So you just think multiples of whatever the denominator is. That's how you figure it out. Okay? We're not actually going to do this example, but in this example, your denominator is 3. So I would use 0 and then use multiples of 3. So it's 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, and then I'm going to use a -3 and a -6. This just makes it so when you graph your ordered pairs, you don't have to graph like halfway, or in this example, you'd have to graph like 2/3 of the way across a box, and that's not very easy to do. Okay? All right, everything else you're doing here, though, is exactly the same. The only thing that changes when there's fractions is that you have to change some of the numbers that you're using. Okay? But I'm going to set up your table for you, and then I'll have you guys graph it. In this one, so you have y equals 1/2 times -4 minus 3. Okay, I know half of -4 is -2. Or if you want to, if you're trying to do this step, the 1/2 times -4, you can use your Desmos calculator. So you would just type 1/2 to type this in. You just type 1 divide by 2, and that's the 1/2. Notice right now your cursor, see how it's flashing, is at the bottom of the 2. You have to tap next to the fraction bar to get it next to the fraction bar, not at the bottom. Now push times -4. And there's your -2. All right, so it's a -2, and then I'm going to take that, and I'm going to subtract away 3. Okay, and again, you can keep add opposite, or if you just want to type it in, -2 minus, -2 minus 3 gets you a -5. Okay, so my y value is a -5. My ordered pair is -4, -5. Okay, let's try it with a -2. So y equals 1/2. Again, in place of x, you're plugging in a -2 this time. So -2 minus 3. Okay, half of -2 is the next step you're doing. If you want to use your calculator, go ahead. So you're going to do 1/2. So type 1 divide by 2. Move your cursor times -2 gives you -1. Now I'm doing -1 minus 3, which gives me a -4. So it's -2, -4. Your next one, y equals 1/2 times 0 minus 3. Half of 0, or anything times 0, is 0. That minus 3 gives you a -3. So I'm at 0, -3. Okay, next step, and I'm just kind of color coding what step I'm doing first. You have y equals 1/2. Your x value for this example is a 2. So half of 2 minus 3. I know half of 2 is 1. I know 1 minus 3 is -2. And then lastly, y equals half of 4 minus 3. Half of 4 is 2. And 2 minus 3 is -1. So I have 2, -2. And I have 4, -1. Okay, now you just have to graph it. So your ordered pair, your first ordered pair, and if you need to pause the video just to kind of catch up on the table, go ahead and pause it. But your first ordered pair is -4, -5. It's right there. So -4, -5. And then I'm going left 2, down 4. So if you go left 2, down 4. Next one, and again, be careful when there's a 0. Whenever there's a 0 in the graphs that we graph, it's always going to put the dot somewhere on the y-axis, somewhere up and down there. Okay, this one is 0, -3. So left and right, you go 0, and then go straight down 1, 2, 3 spots. So it takes you here. Then you have right 2, down 2. Then you have right 4, down 1. Okay, all right, let's connect these dots. Straight line all the way through. Draw an arrow at the end of it. And then we are good to go. And then I did reiterate this with the first one. I forgot to talk about with this second example we did. Check to make sure there's a pattern going on with your order or with your coordinates on your graph with your ordered pairs. So in this one, your pattern from this point to the second point is down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1, down 2 over 1. Okay, and then the graph we just did, let's check to see that there's a pattern here as well. And if there is a pattern, you know you're good. You know your answer is correct. So if you go from this furthest left point to this point, you're going up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2, up 1, right 2. So I know that my answer would be correct. Okay, if you'd like a challenge, go ahead and try this last example here. When you try that last example, I will have the completed notes posted on Canvas. That way you can see if you did it correctly and you can just kind of check your work. It is tricky because of the 2/3. I highly encourage you to use your Desmos calculator when you're trying to do 2/3 like times -6. And then you'd have to do 2/3 times -3. So just make sure you're using your Desmos calculator. If you end up with a decimal, like a crazy long decimal or something, it means you did something wrong. So make sure that you're using your calculator here. Okay. All right, so if you need to, go back and rewatch whatever parts of the video you need to, or just go back and pause the video if you want to just kind of recap how we did some of these questions together. You'll have some examples on your homework where you have to find solutions or tell me if something is a solution. Also, feel free to go back and finish this example if you want to. I'll have those answers posted on Canvas as well. But you'll have some where I give you an ordered pair, you tell me if it's a solution, and then you'll have, I think, 3 or 4 graphs to do where you fill out a table and then you graph that equation. Okay, so keep these notes handy, use them to help you. Feel free to rewatch the video or rewatch parts of the video if you need help with anything. Otherwise, just shoot me a Canvas message if you have any questions.